What's going on, guys? We are back tonight with another episode of Trade Talk, and I want to do basically a hot or not series. So I'm going to list, basically 5 cards right now that are hot and in the trade rooms popping. I keep seeing tons of posts for them, etc. And I'm going to go over like rough values or what I think fair values would be for these current cards. Obviously, these cards trade in a range, so we call basically they trade for so you can call it like mid-mythic prices or just mythic prices in general. So basically they trade for what's called like 1 would be like one mythic card essentially, right? So that's kind of how everybody typically goes in trade rooms. Now you're going to have range of prices. So like a mid-level limited legendary card typically would trade around 0.5 so half of a mythic card essentially. And you'll see some epic cards typically in the range lower than that, from 0.25 to maybe 0.5 some even lower if they're really unplayable. But the decent ones can range as high as 0.75, I would say, on the scale for like top tier epic cards, limited epic cards. So what I've done before we get started is I've taken 3 metrics, and I want to give a shout out to Don Ron. I've been kind of talking with him about this and trying to figure out the best way to go about this, because he spends a lot more time than I do in these trade rooms. But he said his idea was let's break it down into 3 metrics. So playability, scarcity, and hype. So I want to take the card's value based on these 3 metrics and then try to nail down a target price based on playability, scarcity, and hype. Some of these are going to be tough to figure out. Scarcity obviously being probably the toughest one. I do want to eventually go back and look at spotlight packs that released with dates and stuff. So that kind of gives us somewhat of a gauge. And then just eyeballing between friends lists. So like I can look through a lot of people. I have probably 500 friends now in this game. So I can look at their basically all their stuff that they have in their collection and see how scarce some of these cards are as I go through people's basic duplicates and see, if I'm going to trade for this card, who has it, how many copies, and get an idea. So I think I have a pretty good gauge on what's scarce and what's not right now. Just spending some time in the trade rooms, seeing what everybody's trying to get. So I'm gonna go off my gut for this one. I haven't gotten the spotlight pack. I'm trying to go back and get dates on all that. So once I do that, I think I'll have a little bit better gauge on scarcity. But for now, I just kind of threw my best guess on this stuff. So don't take this, with this being gospel or anything. I'm just doing my best judgment on what I think some of these prices are on some of these hot cards. And then I also want to look at some cards that I think, again, are flying under the radar, or essentially cold cards that might be a good time to pick up now while the prices aren't crazy, because if given more support later down the line, we could see spikes in these cards' prices. And those are the cards I picked out for this cold segment, basically flying under the radar. Probably get them at cheap prices now. So let's take a look at the first couple cards on my hot list. These are in no particular order by any means. And I'm going to give you the values that I basically rated for playability, scarcity, and hype. And then I'm going to give you an overall range for price of card in the trade room, what I think would be best geared. First up, I'm going to go with Grim Reaper Paradox. This card's been pretty good as of lately. We've been seeing it in a lot of decks, so I think the playability on it is extremely high. It's a card you can slot in almost any deck, and it's still good. So I'm going to give the playability on it a 4.5. I'm going to give the scarcity on it a 4. I don't think everybody has this card yet. I think there's still quite a few new players looking to get a hold of it. I see a lot of people in trade rooms constantly requesting this card, trying to get it. So I think the scarcity is still high. I don't think the hype is as bad as it was. So I've got the hype down to 3.5. And these are all out of 5. Out of 5 metrics, not the 10. So basically, I'm doing everything on a rating based of 5. So 3.5 on the hype. So I've based on these metrics, I'm saying this card's fair value right now is probably somewhere around 0.75 You might be able to get it a little cheaper occasionally, maybe down at the 0.5 and between 0.5 and 0.75 mm. If it's trading anywhere higher than 0.75, maybe at the 1 mm slot, I think you're overpaying at the moment. But I still think it's a hot card right now. Any epics trading up at 0.75, even around that price, are hot cards. So definitely one to keep your eye on. Next up, I want to go over another super hot card right now. There's a lot of hype in this card just because it is meta breaking in my mind. I wouldn't say breaking, but definitely a card that keeps the meta in check. So kind of a counter to the meta. All epic cards in both players' hands lock for 2 turns. So Alice Blue, extremely powerful, kind of countering that Beowulf meta that we had with all the epic cards. So that was the main reason for this card to drop, right? Beowulf was running rampant, and Alice Blue came on the scene and shut it down, right? So this specific 1-card counter is super good, super hype, because it completely shifted the meta. So I think the playability on it is really high because you can almost slot this in any deck if you wanted to. So 4.5 is my target on playability, which I think is extremely high. Rocking with a scarcity level of 4.5 as well. I think this is a card, right when it hit, a lot of people kind of slept on right out the gate, I think, because they saw the lock ability and they were like, just another lock card, whatever. I don't think they realized right away that, hey, they needed to buy this quick. I mean, there are obviously people who stacked up on this card, but I think for the most part, it's a little bit scarce. I think the price of that pack when it came out was on the higher end too, so definitely could have, caused an issue with people getting a hold of it. And finally, I think the hype on this card is at the max. I think it's at 5. So I think this card is definitely hyped up. So fair market price on this, in my mind, is 1 mm. So price of 1 mythic. But I know it does trade upwards of 1.25. I think that is probably a little bit overpay. I think fair price is 1 mm, but I wouldn't fault you if you're desperate because of the hype right now. I think it's pushing the price up a little bit higher, probably closer to 1.25. So keep that in mind. Again, hype and scarcity drives prices higher, right? So the fair price on this probably is 1 mm, but because of those factors, we are seeing 1.25, maybe even 1.5 in some cases. People are willing to overpay for this. So, yes, very hot right now. Next up, another super hot card on the list. We have Atomic Theory. Life on Land cards or decks specifically running rampant right now. We're seeing between marsupials, mammals, I'm blanking on the other one now, but there's at least 2 or 3 that are running rampant at the moment and winning tiny. I think Tiny rocks Atomic occasionally. I know there's one more, and I'm completely blanking at the moment. Mammals, marsupials. Oh, Primates. Primates is rocking it as well. So 3 really strong decks. At least even Birds can rock this if it really wanted to. I probably wouldn't, but I think it probably could. So anyway, I think the playability on it is a little less than the first 2 mentioned, just because it is specific in heavy Life on Land decks. You can't just slot this in any deck and, swing for the fences. So I'm going to put the playability at 4.25. Still good, still extremely strong, because I'm putting it up a little higher, I think, than I probably normally would, just because this card is really making specific decks top-tier decks right now. So really good card here. I'm going to say scarcity, again, 4.5. We haven't seen too much of this card dropped in packs as of recently, and I think people are dying to pick it up. So I think it's pushing the scarcity up along with the hype at the same time. People are seeing this deck in top-tier decks and, again, wanting it, trying to get it, and it's scarce. You go to the trade room right now, you'll probably see 2 or 3 people requesting this card. So if there's at least 3 or 4 people trying to get this card right now, the hype is there. Next up, for the 4th card, and again, these are in no particular order, guys. We're going to go with Dada. This card, extremely hyped right now. Everybody trying to get a copy, and for good reason. This card is fun, right? To me, it might not be the best on the list, but I think the fact that it opens up avenues for new decks, right? New types of deck building is why this card is hype and scarce because of those reasons, right? Being able to now utilize specific rares and common cards that you normally wouldn't just makes for fun deck building. And it's a good card, right? You get 16 until played, and you get to utilize a bunch of fun other cards you typically wouldn't. So I think it really helps the game out in my mind. And I think Dada is, for playability, 3.75. For scarcity, 4.25. And for hype, I've got it at a 5. At the max, I think it's pretty hyped right now. Everybody's trying to get a hold of it. So for these metrics, I have a fair value at 0.9 mm, so just under the 1 mm slot, but probably does trade upwards of 1 to, so anywhere from 0.75 to 1, I think is pretty much fair value on this card. Oh, Atomic, by the way, I think I skipped over that one, but I had it at 1 mm. Also had Alice Blue at 1 mm as well. Both of those, which I know Alice is trading upwards even higher. And Atomic, I think, is even trading up to 1.5 as well. So, but I still think fair value is at 1, just because the hype right now and the scarcity on some of these cards is driving the price. So, again, Dada, my target was here 0.9. And obviously pretty close to 1. So, let's see. Lan Cyprus is my final hype card, or hot card, I guess you could say. And I like this card a lot. Now, playability a little lower, just because obviously it's slotted in specific decks again. It's really geared towards Oceans decks, right? So if this is the only Tremendous Tree card in the deck, 6 random Ocean cards, wherever gain 22 until played. But that's really strong. 6 cards for 22 until played is a lot of power. And it's already 64 base power, which is nice. I do have the playability on this card at a 4. The scarcity at 4.25. And again, I've been seeing, every time I go in the trade room, somebody is looking for this card. 2, 3, 4 people at a time trying to get a hold of this card. So I think the scarcity level is high, and I think the hype is pretty high on this card as well. So I've got the hype dialed in at a 4, a little lower than the rest on the list, but actually I think Grim was the lowest on the hype, but I've got it at a 4 just because I do see quite a few people wanting this card pretty much daily, so I think the hype is still there. And I've got it at a 0.8 mm. I think it's trading anywhere from 0.5 to 0.75 right now, so I actually have it on the little bit higher end just because of the hype right now. But I think that will probably pull back, and I think 0.75 will eventually be the fair value on this card. And yeah, that's it for the hot cards, guys. Let's go into the cards I think that are flying a little bit under the radar right now, just because their hype is so low. It's going to pull the price down. Hype and scarcity being a little lower is usually going to pull prices down, right? So, but these cards might have good playability. So, first up on my list is Lwig. I really like Lwig just because what it does, it's buffing history. 18 until played, which is a big buff, and you only have to play it next to one other History of Heartbreak card, and that's not that hard to do. So being able to get basically your whole deck 18 until played is pretty massive if you're running all history. Even in smaller, like, you don't have to run all history. Even if like a 9-9 build rocking, 18 on 9 cards is still really relevant. So I think Lwig a little slept on right now. I've got the playability at 3.5. just because he is requiring another card from history, which might not be as good to be able to play to get the buff, and primarily in history. But when you do kind of build around this deck, it is really powerful. I'm saying the scarcity level is a 3 and the hype is a 2. So that's pushing this card's value, in my mind, right around 0.4 to 0.5 mm. I've actually got it at 0.45. So I think that's fair price right now. This card could, in my mind, be trading higher, especially if more History of Heartbreak cards come out that are really strong. I could see this card trading upwards 0.75 pretty easily if the hype picks back up. Next up, we've got number 2 on the list, Carl Sagan. Another guy that when he first came out was really hyped just because of his ability here. Another 9-9 card for Science and Space, giving 16 until played. But unfortunately, the space didn't get 16, only the science. So that kind of hurt it a little bit. The space card just got a discount. But I think it's still good. It's still, in my mind, flying under the radar a little bit. And because this card, again, is a little bit of a build-around card, it is dinging the playability just a tad. I've got it at a 3.75. I've got the scarcity at a 3.5 and the hype at 2.5. So fair value, in my mind, is 0.55 mm. So a little bit higher than a mid-mythic card. Mid-mythic. A little bit higher than a mid-tier limited legendary card, but again, I think it could be trading upwards to 0.75 fairly easily. So I think this card is a little bit slept on. Some more science/space combo cards could see this card really rise in value, I think. I'm curious to see what Dark Photon does too. Maybe we see some Carl Sagan Photon decks arise. That's kind of one of the things I want to try out once I can get a hold of a copy myself. I think that'll be a fun combo. All right, next up, I am going for a Marco Polo. This one came from B-Sloth, actually recommended this card as undervalued, and I said, yeah, I could kind of see that. I think if we see some more arts and culture / history cards coming about, kind of like a 9/9 card for those two albums, I think this card could start seeing a big demand, because it is a lot, right? You're going to get a 15 until played buff, whether you win or lose, right? So if you're rocking 9/9 arts and history, I think that would be a pretty good card to slot in, just because you're going to get the 15 on 9 cards no matter what. So that is a nice significant buff as well. So Marco Polo playability rocking 3.25, just because, again, you do need to have somewhat of an arts and culture / history split. And right now we don't really have too many cards that are doing that. We do have the one, it's a fusion card. I always forget the name of it, but it's like an 8/8 card essentially. And that's probably the best case for it, but it's not until played. I think it only lasts for 3 turns. So not the best. I would really prefer a 9/9 until played card to be able to slot Marco Polo into it. And I've got the scarcity at a 3 and the hype only at a 2. So this card not seeing much action in the trade rooms that I've noticed. So I've got it down at a 0.4 mm. 0.4 mm, just under kind of that mid-tier. So I think it's a little undervalued right now. I think we could definitely be seeing upwards, to that 0.5 to 0.75 on this pretty easily. So I think it's trading a little under the radar right now. Next up, let's jump back to some epic cards. Only 2 more cards on the list here, guys. We're almost done. Stay with me. Jumping over to Vikings. Aethelwold's Revolt. I think this card is pretty slept on, and really for good reason. Vikings doesn't have much going on yet, so this is kind of a sleeper pick for the future, I think, because I think we're going to see more Viking cards come out slowly but surely, and this is a pretty good one. You get 24 until played, so if your deck has at least 1 Unruly Rulers, your Vikings get 24 until played, so massive buff, but your Unruly Rulers lose 5, so really, it's just toss Andronicus in there. You don't care if it loses 5 on its own. And you're getting the 24 until played buff, which is massive. So I think this card, if Vikings starts becoming a thing, I think this card will be leading the pack and could easily see a resurgence up to 0.75 and higher, because the 24 until played is just that strong. So currently sitting at playability at a 3. Obviously, it's pretty specific. You need a specific Unruly Ruler, and it has to be Vikings, which right now isn't really seeing much play. So this is more of a in the future type playability in my mind at a 3. I think the scarcity is at 3.5, and I've got it that high just because I remember when this pack came out, I want to say the Epic, it was just for this Epic card specifically, and I want to say the price was quite high, because I remember not wanting to buy too many packs trying to get it. And I think I bought it like on the second pack, and I was like, oh, thank goodness, because I'm not going to keep trying to get this card at this price. So On the hype, I have it down at 1.75. I think nobody's really looking at the Vikings right now, and I think that is probably an issue. I think they could be better in the future. So I've got this at 0.4 mm, current price. Let's see, jumping over to my last sleeper pick here, I'm looking at a science buff, Archa. I've always said this card is pretty slept on. I really like this card, especially in heavy science decks. This card is quite an all-star, honestly, especially for only 4 energy. I think it's really strong. So when played, if played in the left or right slot, your science cards in hand gain 18 this turn and next. So really you're going to get, if you have a fistful of science cards, that's 5 cards you're going to get down for an extra 18 power. So pretty good. That's dang near 100 power plus the 36 you get. So just under 100 power and then only 4 energy. So all that for just 4 energies. Pretty good. So playability, I'm rocking a 3 on this card. The scarcity 2.5 and the hype down at 1.5. So again, making this card trade down at like 0.25 to 0.3. So pretty low. I think this card could easily we get some more science heavy decks going. Could easily get up to that 0.5 range. I think that's reasonable for a card like this. Probably won't see it go too much higher. I don't think it's going to get up to the, the Lan Cyprus range or Grim Reaper range by any means. But I think for what it does, it's really good. And I think it is a little undervalued right now and a little slept on. So I could see this up to 0.5, honestly, one day. But maybe not right now. But that's it, guys, for tonight. Just wanted to run through my hot or not, or hot or cold list, however you want to say it, under the radar. Cards hot right now. Cards flying under the radar right now. But hopefully you enjoyed and gives you some something to chew on, a little something to think about. Mull over, if you will. But let me know in the comments what you thought. Maybe you've got different opinions on some of these cards, and that's fine. I'd love to hear it. Like I said, this list is completely my opinion, my bias. Just trying to do my best to gauge prices and put somewhat reasonable values based on 3 metrics, right? Playability, scarcity, and hype. So if you disagree, I understand. It's completely valid to have your own opinion in these things. This is just a ballpark. Primarily a good way for new players to think too, right? I don't want new players to miss out on some of these cards, thinking, oh, they don't know what they have, and then they trade, an atomic theory away for something that's completely worthless, right? We don't want to see that. I mean, some of you guys probably enjoy making those trades, but I don't. I don't like ripping people off in that way. So hopefully this gives some new players a little bit more insight. So let me know what you guys thought. As always, please hit that like button and that subscribe button, and we'll keep the content flowing, guys. But all right, thanks for watching, guys.